welcome to Message to Lightworkers podcast, an interview series created to share and connect through our healing work and life path. My name is Bri Hernandez, aka Santora Kuma, and I'll be your host for today. I will be sharing each guest's information in the info box. I just ask that if you feel inspired and motivated by these stories, that you please share, like, and subscribe so that this channel may grow infinitely to inspire and motivate other people and lightworkers around the world. I thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this session. Today we have a special guest. We have Helgeson, known as the Scrying Azalea. She has been a massage therapist for 13 years, specializing in somatic energy work, and a year later found her calling as a shaman through her studies with path home training in the Lakota, Arapaho, Choctaw, Tibetan, and Celtic shamanic traditions. She continued her studies with a Navajo shaman working with feathers, known as the Feather Way. And in 2010, she furthered her studies and became a level 2 Reiki practitioner, and in 2015 completed her Isis priestess training, receiving her attunement as an Isis priestess. In 2018, Amber experienced profound healing through a plant medicine ceremony, which resulted in the plant medicine calling her forth on her path as a medicine keeper. She began training with a Mayan plant medicine shaman and now provides Mayan plant medicine ceremonies, working with many plant medicines that empower others to clear their blockages and open pathways for self-awareness and awakenings to come forth. Through her 6 to 12 month intensive, she continues ceremonial awakenings through shamanic practices, energy work, and plant medicine to allow each individual to hear their song, feel their dance, and know their medicine. The results of her success as a plant medicine keeper and shamanic practitioner in many native traditions have put her in high demand, traveling across the country, providing private and group plant medicine ceremonies and personal energy workings. I'm excited to hear more about your story, Amber, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I'm so happy to have you. Amber, can you tell me how this all started?
Okay.
How did this all start?
How did this all start?
One thing I wanted to mention is that you have shamanic training, but in many different aspects and tradition. So I kind of want to know, how did that come to be? You're kind of lucky to have that many different backgrounds as well.
Yeah, when I went through massage therapy school, I knew that was just the beginning of this path that I've always felt really guided to step into. And as soon as I graduated with my associates, I instantly found Path Home, and it was actually through Gwilda, who is the owner and operator of Path Home, that she studied. She is initiated into the Lakota, but she studied with the Arapaho, the Navajo, the Choctaw. She's got Arapaho, Cheyenne, as well as Celtic and that Tibetan background. And so the majority of my training definitely came from Path Home, which they're beautiful. They're based in, I think she's based in Berthoud, Colorado now. And I really suggest anyone who really is interested in walking that path to step in with Gwilda. What I really enjoyed about her and most other traditions is they kind of scan you to make sure that this is the path for you. So they're just not throwing anyone in that path, because it's not always the easiest path to walk. And so after I studied with Gwilda, I did end up moving across the country and lived on Guam for a few years, and actually studied with a Korean medicine doctor as well for a little bit. And then when I came back is when I met Garrett Duncan, who, through my mom, thankfully a lot of these people came through my mom, hallelujah, he's the Navajo shaman that works with Featherway. And so through him, I learned how to work with the feathers, how to do extractions, if you will, and pulling of energies out of the auric field with feather work. But it's also just another great way to connect with the bird tribes as well, because the bird, when you're looking at traditions in like Lakota or Navajo, you've got the father sky, which is where the eagles soar, and that's where our wisdom comes from. And so when we talk about working with Featherway, we're bringing in this wisdom, this oversight of what spirit and connection is. And so I guess outside of Path Home and Garrett Duncan, I was just really blessed to be in the right place at the right time when it comes to that, you know, and then just having my background as well, being Celtic and Nordic, but as well as being Powhatan and Crow, I just kind of bled together in that space and just trust spirit. So
Could you tell me, like the basic kind of like definition, or for someone who doesn't really know what shamanic healing is, what is shamanic healing?
mhm.
And what did you, because you're studying so many different traditions, tell me what you kind of find it's like the basis of all of them, or like what is the difference? Because you're studying different traditions, so like what is the difference, and then also what is shamanism?
Yeah. So shamanism, um, well, let's start with what's the similarities, right? Through my studies with multiple backgrounds, this kind of goes into my very first book that I ever stepped into in my great books class back in high school. I was a senior, and it's Siddhartha. And Siddhartha, when you break down the word, it means you have achieved what you have searched for. And so if you look at religions, which to me, shamanism is, if we're going to put it in a box, it's a type of religion. Buddhism to Confucianism to shamanism to Celtic and Nordic runes, you know, however you want to look at it, it's essentially all just a form of learning how to harness our energetic, our life force. And so through shamanism, it's known as shamanism because of the culture that it came from. You know, other places it could be, you know, Buddhism to, I mean, goodness, to Nordic witchcraft, whatever it is. But all of that is learning how to work with this aspect or the duality of this physical plane. You know, you've got our spiritual aspect, which we are already spiritual beings. We already have this knowledge. We're here in physical form to experience what it's like within the polarity of this reality. And so through shamanism, it's mastery of self. So then that we can reflect that for other people, because just like the flower of life, we are all connected, but we're our own universe within that space. And so shamanism to me is just a mastery of self, of using different tools, whether it's plant medicine, meditation, energy work, which energy work, again, manipulation isn't being used in a way like a negative context when I say this. It's just the understanding of this energetic form that we can access on this planet and how to work it to benefit the planet, ourselves, and everyone else. And so in the traditional sense, shaman is a plant medicine woman or man. And that means that in native traditions, that's the person they would go to for healing. You know, whether it's working with herbs, whether it's doing soul retrieval, which soul retrieval is a huge aspect of shamanic healing. And the basis of that is when we experience something traumatic, even if it's the smallest thing, our soul, our energetic aspect of the self actually fragments. And the reason why they believe that it fragments is because if we're in full-blown spiritual alignment and form, we're always in love. We're always feeling good, but when we're here in these bodies, we experience the contrast. We experience a little bit of that emotional pain. And so we just fragment from that because it's something that we're not used to. And so through a soul retrieval session, we go in through these different realms and energetic planes, and we call forth those parts of you that are ready to come forward, because when we are so offline, we start to work against ourselves instead of working with ourselves. And so that's really the basis. It's all about self-empowerment. It's about showing up for ourselves so that we can better the planet, because it starts here.
So that's amazing. I want you to tie in plants, because I know shamanism is a tradition where it's very intertwined with nature, water, elements, fire. Can you explain that kind of historic like involvement of the elements?
Yeah, the elements are so big. They're so big. So the elements go in with the directions, right? In native traditions, we focus more on the directions than we do like the actual elements. In Celtic traditions and Nordic traditions, we focus more on the elemental aspect. Again, to me, they're one of the same. So you've got the direction of the east, the south, the west, and the north, and that's what creates your medicine wheel. In the East, traditionally, that's where you're going to plant. That's the new day, right? We just birthed literally into 2021 this morning with the sun rising in the east. So this is a place of new beginnings. You've got springtime. That's going to be one of your air. Air traditionally comes with that space. You're going to plant when you're being intentional. The springtime is when the soil is prime for planting what you want to create. Then you head to the south, which is the direction, or the people of like the ant people. You're going to look at desert style, like the Pueblo. A lot of snake energy or spider energy really comes from the south. And that's going to be your summertime. That's going to be the time of enjoying what you planted because it's coming to fruition. And then you head into the west, which is the direction for fall. And that's usually more of like water, a little bit of what people would consider the dark goddess, because it's a very emotional space for us because we're going to harvest now. We're going to say, this is what's going to come with us into this next year, this next phase, and this is what we're letting go of as we head into the direction of the north, which is actually the space of winter. It's our hibernation. It's where things die. And you really go inward so that you can clean everything out. You're still in silence. Kuan Yin works with me a lot in the north, so that then that new cycle can then begin in the direction of the east. And so when we look at, the spring, summer, fall, winter, it's all just one big medicine wheel. And so, you've got the air in the east. South, you're going to have fire. West, you're going to have water. And then north is going to be earth. And then you've got your father and your mother. And then in the center of all of that is us. We are literally the physical representations of all of these spaces, which is so exciting because as shamanism teaches, if you can harness that, that's when you step into moving forward and helping not just yourself, but the planet.
Got it. So do we all have our own wheel, or would you say it's like we're kind of all just participating in this one giant wheel? How does that work?
I would say it's a little bit of both. So if you think of the flower of life, you've got the center, which the center is essentially the seed, right? That's the atom that creates everything. Then you've got the flower petals, which is our own individual self, but each flower petal touches every other flower petal. So our own reality, our own wheel, creates the grander wheel as a collective. And so it's both. It's not one or the other. That's the space of duality or the polarity of having both.
I love that. So it's like you said at the beginning, it's all about kind of like first the self and then how the self contributes to that whole.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Could you tie in plants? Tell me about your work with plants. What do they do? What do they tell you?
Yeah.
Communicate with them. How does it help people?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's so many ways that they help. You don't have to just access them through like plant medicine ceremonies where you're working with Tepes Cojite, which is the plant medicine that I'm married to, ayahuasca, San Pedro, or even peyote. You can work with them more on a Celtic tradition, which is working with the herbs that grow naturally in the area, yarrow or mullein. Mullein grows, it's a plethora of mullein out here, where if you grab mullein and you harvest it, dry it, and then throw it in some water, it's great for respiratory issues. So you can work in it and work with it that way. But I've always really been connected to plants. My mom actually has equipment that allows plants to sing, and she's doing research studies with them. And so anytime that I hold a plant medicine ceremony, we have plants that legitimately are singing. And so when I work with Tepes Cojite, that medicine, again, I'm married to that medicine, but that medicine in particular, when you hold the intention of what you want to really work with within that space, it's going it blows me out of the water every time that I work with it. I hold a very intentional space to continue to heal any physical ailments. This specific medicine is antibacterial and antifungal. So not only is it spiritually helping you and cleansing, it is literally cleansing from the inside out physically for you. And I know many people who have sat with this medicine quite frequently and actually has helped them heal chronic illnesses. Tepes does come to me when I know it's time to sit. Even if I'm not around him, I will smell him or I'll taste him. And so I feel like it's his way of saying, hello, it's time to sit with it. But each tree, each plant, each flower, they all have an essence and they all have a story to bring forward. And so again, intention, it goes into the intention of what you want to create or what you want to hear. The trees are life, right? Not just the, no, save the trees kind of situation because they give us oxygen. Our lungs mirror and mimic the root system of a tree. You know, as deep as we ground in is as high as we will go, just as the tree. As deep as those roots go is as high as those branches and those leaves are going to flourish. And so it's just all a part of life. It's all a part, it's that mirror reflection, it's that flower of life. If we can give back, let's give back. There is one thing that I hear very frequently and consistently, and we do need to take care of the planet, but the planet has taken care of herself for so many years that if we could just slow down and listen and get out of the hustle and bustle of how our world has been created, I feel like the message there is that we will realize that there actually already is balance, and the illusion is that we are out of balance. Yeah.
You say that again?
Yeah. Yeah, so the messages that I get quite frequently with the planet and even the trees, even sitting here, I have this beautiful tree sitting out right in front of me that I'm connecting with. And the illusion that we have on this planet as humans is that we are separated, but we're not separated. And so with this idea of that the planet is falling apart or that the planet is dying in some way, shape, or form, this isn't her first rodeo. She's been around much longer than we have. And she has survived through so much and she has thrived through so much. But her message and the plant's messages are just stop, surrender, and listen. Because if you can really ground into her and get out of the hustle and bustle of everyday life, including being in the cities. I don't know if you know the artist named Ayla Naro, but she has this amazing song where it talks about her brother, you know, just being man, only wants a taste of the sky because they prefer to live in the city, but they're so enamored by this illusion, right? This illusion of not really being connected to nature. And so her message and the plant's messages are, step out of that space. Step out of being in your head so much, get into the heart, ground in, and you'll see that everything is actually already taken care of.
Okay, so is this what you mean by, I want you to kind of go back to singing. What is exactly happening when you say that a plant is singing? Like, do you physically hear a song? Or are you just like hearing it through like, you know, energy and you feel it like in your heart? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so there's two things. So in traditional shamanism, when we work with a plant, we can hear the plant without it actually physically singing. It's because every plant has a song. But this, when it comes to the plant music, it's legitimately plants that you can hear play music. And it's a biofeedback machine that in 2007, my mom went out to an eco-conscious community known as Dom and Her. And she was introduced to this plant, you know, plant equipment, and she went on this really big out-of-body experience and was shown this is what you're supposed to do with this. And so she's been doing research studies with a lab now that they believe what they're discovering could really change how we work with medicine. And so we've got both. Plants are always singing to us, but it just depends on how, if we're going to really listen and drop in. But also, now that we can bring an actual song to where we can hear them, It's a whole other ballgame. So this biofeedback machine has a synthesizer in it. And by connecting it to the canopy of a plant and then to the root system, you're getting a full rounded experience, right? The energy frequency. It then gets emitted into this biofeedback machine, and then the plant becomes the orchestrator. And it literally will choose what it wants to play, and it just starts to play music.
That is so wild. That is so wild. I love that.
Yeah.
And there's two things I want to mention here. There was a show, I think it was a film on Netflix, and it was about vegan like Olympians. And so all these Olympians are talking about like eating vegetables and how they're literally like champions, right?
Yeah.
In one of the pieces, there's a lot of like scientists kind of speaking about plants and stuff. And one of the findings that I thought was like really fascinating, because I was like, wow, the plant, so tofu, for example, all plants have like estrogen compounds in it, right? And especially tofu. People are freaking out about tofu because they're like, if a man eats too much tofu, they'll start becoming a woman. That's like one of the myths, right? But the scientists, I forget what those scientists call when they study plants, but he was talking about how the plants are so intelligent that it'll actually talk to the body, and it'll actually just give you as much as you need. However, if your body is imbalanced, as in like if it has too much estrogen, it'll actually send blockers so that you cannot absorb any more estrogen. So the idea of the plant being so intelligent to be able to give you what you need as you're eating it, because there's a communication there. There's a communication line. I thought that was just so fascinating.
Yeah.
And now that I'm hearing that the plants can sing, I've never actually heard a plant sing, but I can definitely like feel, vibes. So I'm really interested in hearing more about that study. Maybe we can put a link in later.
Yeah.
When results are shown, more results and more research, that'll be very interesting to see. And the second thing I wanted to mention was during shutdown. So there was a time during the pandemic where all of us were, kind of enclosed for a while. And I was thinking, the people that are going to really survive through this, like literally if all the trucks stop moving, if all the food stopped coming in, if all of a sudden our pipes went down, the people that are going to make it through are the people that know how to live on the land, the people that know how to farm. They have resources to water. They're not reliant on stores for anything. The people that have those skills to weave clothing and get honey and blend their own medicine. Like these are the people that are going to survive. And if we think about the people that have these skills, they're tribal people. And I feel like that was a huge message for me, at least as I was laying down in my bed, after like 2 months of being in quarantine, like if, crap really hit the fan, or whatever that saying is, like slowing down, as you said, slowing down and really kind of realigning with what is actually important, because we're building this machine of stress, deadlines, of what are we really doing? So it's just interesting because I feel like, nature has its own intuition, and then I love science as well. Like I love the technologies that we're coming out with. It just makes me kind of feel like, how do we blend everything, right? How do we?
Yeah, I agree with that, because there's technology, when it's balanced and used with discipline, helps so much. It could really advance living on the land, right? So actually where I'm at right now is this place called Mystic Mesa Ranch out here in Hotchkiss, Colorado. And it literally, they are living off the land. We're going to be subleasing a little tiny home that literally has a compostable toilet, and you have to like pump your own water, and like you're getting back to your roots, right? Like, and it's really the message with all of this, because last year we were forced in some beautiful ways as a collective to surrender and to step inward. And I really feel the message for 2021 is that it's time now to create those communities, but not the type of not communities in the sense that's built off of a grid that could potentially fall. It's now time to step in and to learn these skills in these new ways, which they're not even new. The thing that's new about it is that we now have the technology to be able to marry with nature in a way to help sustain us easier so that we can thrive with nature in a whole other way.
If you could give any book suggestions, what would it be and why?
Yeah. Okay. So obviously Siddhartha. Siddhartha is my all-time favorite. Again, that was like one of the first books. I grew up with a mom who left a Fortune 500 company, being a high-end, end of the company, to stepping on her spiritual path. She went into crystal bowls and the plant music and all these things when I was in high school. And so when I stepped in with Siddhartha, no matter what part of your journey you're on, that book is a phenomenal book. One, because I believe it humbles us, but two, we're all just here to live the better version of ourselves. And that's what that book is all about. We are achieving this goal as a collective and as an individual. So Siddhartha, first and foremost. The next one is Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. That is a phenomenal book. There's actually a whole work section back there. And the reason why I gravitate towards that book is because on the somatic level of the body, whether we remember it or not, everything gets stored in the muscles and the cells. And if we don't express these things, like if you look at, what is the name of the volcano out in Hawaii? They call her Pele. It just started erupting on the 21st, on the solstice. Those are emotions, if you look at it that way. Fire is anger. Here in Colorado, we just had two of the biggest fires of Colorado history, just like wipe some serious stuff out. And as someone who understands that nature aspect, fire is anger. There was a lot of anger that was coming up from last year. The land, absolutely. There's the land even has somatic levels, like ley lines. There's a story of how Mustangs, they're so important to be roaming free on the land, or wild horses, because when they run, the shamanic story is that when they run, the hooves on the ground actually balances the energetic fields of the planet. And wild horses are being taken off the land left and right now, and they're being stored in pens and euthanized in ways that just, it's for me, it's heartbreaking, because those they have a purpose, right? Just like wolves have a purpose. They're the top predator. That's how we keep populations of deer and elk down. And so it's all about bringing that balance back in. So part of that balance within this book is, let's work through these emotions. Let's work through these feelings. That's the shadow side. That's the feminine, like dark, yeah, this is who we are. But we need that. We can't just stick to one side, because that's where we've been this entire time. And now we're being pushed and guided back to a state of balance between the two, which is why I believe the world is in the state that it is.
I love that answer, especially, that was very eye-opening, that statement that you made just now.
Yeah.
What is the best investment that you've ever made, whether that be with time, energy, money, and why?
Sorry, say that again.
What is the best investment that you've ever made?
Oh, yeah. My best investment was really stepping in with Abuelito Tepes. That was finally the point in my shifting an existence that I said, okay, I'm finally going to say yes to myself on this journey. Because for the old me, if you will, 3 years ago, would have been like, oh man, this is going to be a lonely journey. I don't know if that's the journey that I want to go down. But through my own shiftings of feelings and emotions, that was my biggest investment that I could have ever given to myself, was to say, I love myself so much that I'm saying yes to this journey so that I can be who I want to be. Yeah.
What event took place that had the biggest impact on your spiritual journey, and what did you learn?
That one, I was 16 years old, and my mom had a tradition where I have an older sister and a younger brother. When we turned 16, we all went on our own little journey with mom. And at that time, I started walking down a pretty dark path. I was, severely depressed. I had suicidal thoughts, and so she took me to Oregon, to Portland, and she was getting her attunement with raindrop therapy. And it was a minister who was in charge of all of this, right? And so I'm 16, I'm surrounded by all these older people while she's doing her thing. And I remember sitting there, and this guy was like, we're going to do an anointment. Who wants to have an anointment? And I was like, like, no, I don't think so. But he picked me. And through Young Living, they have the 3 essential oil blends that they used on baby Jesus when he was born. So you've got the 3 wise men, myrrh, and one other one. And he anointed me with them. And that was the pivotal point in my early teens that really shifted my life around and really got me onto the path that was more in alignment with who I believe I am. Yeah.
And at what point did you know that it was time to change your path and to kind of just go full forward with like this calling of shamanic healing?
Yeah. So it's going to go back to working with tepes. I came across tepes through my own healing. There was a really big lineage thing that was coming through. And at that time, I was in a relationship with a man who was great for my son, but did not nourish me at all. And that was that pivotal point where I was like, I have to nourish myself. I can't rely on other people to nourish me. But also at the same time, part of my nourishment is recognizing that this relationship and the way that I'm living isn't supporting myself. And so saying yes to tepes was that point, but also saying, hey, this is what I need within this relationship. Are you able to present this for me? And he said no. And that separation was by far, I feel like the moment that separation happened, like it just took off completely.
You kind of like cleared up space and made room, that whole.
Yeah.
What is one lie that you lived by in the past that you have overcome, or maybe that you're attempting to overcome now?
That would be the lie of being unworthy or not enough. Because that's, if you think of life in our spiritual form, we are everything already. It's the illusions of separation and the illusions of being attached to our traumas and a victimhood or, these experiences that tell us that we're not worthy. And so I'm still working on that every day, but I've definitely come a long way within this space of knowing what my worth is and knowing that I deserve those things.
What would you tell a struggling light worker to remember as they're attempting to follow their path?
Yeah. First and foremost, it's not always going to be an easy path, but to always hold your faith. Always sit down with yourself and know why you're doing this. Especially when because part of what we're doing on this planet is we're clearing lineages. It's not just our stuff that we're working through. We are literally clearing lineages of so many people that came before us, that's usually what feels the heaviest, and it's just so consistent and it's always work. But to always come back to your center and to meditate, get back with Siddhartha, get out in nature, do something that's going to make you feel good, because in those moments of where you're really sitting within the trauma or the shadow self, that is where the true pivot happens, especially when you're able to come into it from a place of absolute love. And instead of looking at it as this is such an intense situation, that, wow, I get to do this. I get to clear 7 generations behind me and 7 in front of me. That's amazing. And so if you can hold that light, master holding the light in all spaces, it's going to be such a beautiful and easy journey for you.
I love that. If you could assign one I am affirmation to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
Yeah, I am the answer, because it starts here. You know, we have to do the work here so that it can then reflect out here. So you are the answer. You are the answer to your self-love. You are the answer to everything that you've ever wanted. And we are the answer to bringing in the new planet, this new earth.
Amber, I want to thank you for visiting and sharing your story and all of this wisdom today.
Yeah, thank you. I am honored.
Listeners, if you want to connect with Amber, just make sure that you follow or actually just scroll down to the info box. I'll be posting links there to have a little bit more connection with her. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this video if you think that this could inspire, help, or assist someone else, because that is what we are here to do as light workers, is to assist, guide, and help. So thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.